Welcome to SoWhat, the podcast, to our very special edition for today. Our brother Mike Morgan from Shiloh Baptist couldn't join us today. He's traveling. And so we have a very special guest with us, J.P. Gradone. Did I pronounce that right?
You did.
And he is a missionary, and he works with missional business. And if you're like me, I hadn't really heard that term before, so we're going to learn all about that today. So we just want to welcome you to a special edition of SoWhat, the podcast. And of course, before we close out today, we will ask that question. So what? So what does missional business mean? How can we learn more about that? How can we pray for JP and his ministry? And what does that look like for us? And perhaps this is something that may interest you. So I'm going to ask Brother Dave, would you kind of give us a little bit of an intro of that and, of course, introduce our special guest for today?
Yes, this is kind of cool because for those of you that have known me for a little while, JP has known me probably longer than you have. He and his wife, Cheryl, were just mentors and supports for Laura and I as we sort of came here when Pastor Keith and I first met something 12 years ago.
That's right.
So there's like bigger connection behind the scenes. And I have been able to watch the Lord transition their life from the outside, like, God, what are you doing with them? These amazing, just God-loving mentors, and you look at someone else's life and you kind of wonder why is this happening to them? And they were here in New Jersey for a period of time, and then all of a sudden it was this abrupt upbringing into what they're doing now, which I'm so excited about for a number of reasons, and hopefully I'll be able to share a little bit of that with you. But then we had the blessing of being their sending church as they have gone out into the missions field. So I want to hear a little bit. I want to let from your mouth a little bit of of a quick why and how you think the Lord has gotten you to where you are. You and I always talk about this, the preparation of your previous experience, your resume, if you will. The last thing that you would think, it's like, hey, if I were to look at your resume and have turned back before you went into the missions field, I would be like, hey, this guy's ready for retirement. Right?
Yeah.
Like he's going to spend the rest of his days here, slow down a little bit. And instead you were open to the Lord. And the two of you have just been unbelievable examples of surrender as we're coming up, to where we are. And really, not only was it not a waste of your resume, but I don't think there's anyone more prepared to be doing what you're doing that I've ever known. Yeah, and cool. So can you connect a little bit of that for us? Just give us a brief overview. Yeah. What's your background? What are the things that bring you to life? Yeah. What's your, how do we connect the business and missions, and why is that so important for who you are in this role?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dave. Even though I've been all over the world, at heart, I'm a Jersey guy. So I'm born and raised in the Shore and love that. And my background, finished college and worked in a family business. My wife's family had a business. I was running one of them, and they sold it to a corporation. And I often tell people when my in-laws sold a business, they sold us as well. So we went with the business, and I started out in the corporate world. So my 20 years, 15 of them were in the corporate side. God just really prospered us and blessed us. And
what portion of the corporate side?
I started from the running a location, and then a district manager, a regional manager, regional vice president, then ultimately became a regional president for the eastern half of the U.S.
So like
for our
leadership,
industries. Top, multiple locations, leading, operational, that type of thing.
A lot of experience there.
Yeah, and then crazy, during that time, we moved a lot, and we're very active in church.
Because of business?
Why did you move because of business. Okay. Yeah, that's how it is in this country, or how it was.
Yeah. Sure.
We didn't have digital nomads back then. So we moved a lot, and twice pastors before we left asked me if I would consider coming on full-time on the church staff. And the funny thing about it is, I hate to say this, I don't even know that I prayed about it. It was like are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I just never saw myself in that role.
Okay.
I just loved business, and I really had a goal to grow in that. And so in February 22nd, 2003, got a phone call from a church we were attending before. When I was in corporate, we had now moved, and they said, would you come and be our executive pastor? And I laughed at them, and I thought, this is hilarious. I don't want to do something like this. And I hung up the phone, and as soon as I hung up the phone, I completely broke down and cried.
Wow.
And Cheryl didn't know what was going on. And I just said, Cheryl, they just asked me to be the executive pastor, and it's crazy, but I think we need to do this, And it was like, I grew up in church, and you always heard people talk about, the call,
Sure, yeah, of course.
and it was like,
It was a
what
real
is
call.
that? Yeah, it's like,
you got a phone call.
for me,
was
that
an
was always
actual
like
call.
da 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 da, type
That's
of
funny.
thing. But I really sensed that God wanted us to do it, and I knew it was not going to be easy. And at that point in my life, unlike a lot of people who get pulled out of the business world, we weren't downsized, or I was actually at the best part of my career, making the most money I've ever made in my life, and God moved us out. And so then for the next 13 years, we served as an executive pastor. So I took my business experience and applied it to the church world. And for those who don't know what an executive pastor is, if I can make the correlation to the business, it would be like the senior pastor being the CEO, and the executive pastors like the chief operating officer,
Okay.
chief financial officer. So I pretty much
Keith, I don't know
ran-
anything about that.
I know.
We do it all.
Yeah, that's
all of
right.
us. We
For
mow the
all
lawn.
those
We mow the
letters.
lawns
Right.
too.
And this
Everything.
is typically bigger
Up and down.
churches, mega church
Well, I
situations.
appreciate that explanation.
Yeah.
So I pretty
helps.
much oversaw the operations, the finances, and the ministries of the church.
Yeah.
So it's kind of neat to take my business experience and apply it to that. And then there was a time when we were in transition. One of the pastors that we served with, after less than 2 years with him, he left the pastorate and went and joined as a missionary with an organization called SIM to do discipleship in Africa. And so we separated for a few years, and then we were in transition. And he asked us asked me if I would consider helping them in this disciple-making movement that they were doing throughout Africa, and if I would join SIM and do that. And we prayed about it, and we felt like the Lord was moving us in that direction. But I had a major condition. I said, look, I'm 58 years old. I'm more than happy to help you, but there's no way I'm leaving the U.S. and moving to Africa. It's not happening. We
last
we
thing
love
you
this.
tell
Yeah,
the Lord.
yeah, right. Don't ever do that.
Never.
Don't ever do that. So he said, fine. So for the next year and a half, we had joined SIM as missionaries, had a difficult time raising support because we weren't going overseas. There's this Western mentality that missionaries
course.
live in the field.
Right.
And so I was working part-time or working full-time and then getting away and making trips to Africa about 4 or 5 times a year. And then God began to just move on us in a different way. Doors began to close in the U.S. and doors began to open in Africa. And so at the ripe young age of 61, and my wife was 60, we moved to Nairobi, Kenya.
Wow.
And when a lot of people our age are moving back to be with their grandchildren,
Yeah, sure.
we were leaving. So it was kind of like the third phase of our lives. So we moved, excuse me, I'm dealing with allergies.
That's right.
We moved,
of
to
being in
Nairobi.
Jersey, right?
Yeah, it really is. We moved to Nairobi, and shortly after that, during COVID, the Lord began to deal directly with me during my quiet times about working with the unreached. And I'd always kind of been an equipper and supporter of other ministries, but he was specifically saying, I want you to go to the unreached. And I was actually seeing pictures of people from majority faiths in front of me. And I said, Lord, I'm happy to say yes, but I'm not a preacher. I'm not a church planner. I'm just a business guy who loves Jesus. That's it. And shortly after that, through just, again, the Lord opening doors, I was introduced to missional business. And I found that through business, I could actually be involved in reaching hundreds of thousands of millions of unreached people groups in a very unique way.
Yeah.
And so that brought me to where I am today.
Can we talk about that unique way?
Oh, absolutely.
Because
That's
you
so
got
interesting.
Some,
Yeah.
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 So what is that unique way to reach that many. So
Yeah.
break that down.
Look-
Yeah, in a lot of these countries, it's the 1040 window, and for those who don't know what that is, that's a latitude on the map that really covers an area that includes North Africa. It would include Asia, Central Asia, South Asia, all the way into China. It's just a scope. In that area of the 1040 window is 2/3 of the world population, if you can imagine that. 2/3 of the world population. When you think of high density countries like India and all, it makes sense. 70% of that 2/3 of the population are unreached. And most, probably over 80% of the countries in that area are completely closed to the gospel. And what that means is that when we went to Nairobi, we were able to get a religious workers visa. These countries, there is no religious workers visas. As a matter of fact, missionaries are not allowed in the country. There's no, they're pretty much majority faith countries, whether that be Muslim, whether it be Buddhist or be Hindu. And so therefore, the traditional missionary cannot go in that country and bring the gospel. However, in those same countries, there's a huge need for foreign investment in business or to bring talent from more developed countries into their countries to work in their businesses. And so we use that opportunity to go in and actually create businesses, but the difference is they're not businesses just for profit. We work on a concept, there's a quadruple bottom line in missional business. And the quadruple bottom line says that we're going to make financial impact. So we are going to, these are viable businesses, so we just don't go and start a business, a
Just
fake
to get
business.
in and then
Right.
get out. Yeah.
It's a viable, profitable business, so it has financial impact. It has social impact. In other words, it's holistic in that it provides jobs for the local population. It provides a product or service that is not there. Thirdly, of course, is the spiritual impact. All of our business plans have a missional thread through it. We're there to have a viable business, but we're there to bring the gospel into that community in a very different way. And then the fourth one, which a lot of people don't think about, is the environmental impact. Many of these countries do not know how to take care of God's creation.
That's
And so we add that element as well. A little tricky sometimes, but we add that. So we come in with a holistic impact, but the real thread, the vision statement for my area is that we would have flourishing workers in sustainable business environments, transforming communities where Christ is least known. So our ultimate goal is to transform communities where Christ is least known. So we go into primarily unreached countries. We can only transform those communities if we can stay in the community, which means we have to have a sustainable, profitable business model, or else the government will say,
What are you doing here?
You can't keep your business visa.
Right.
Yeah.
And the only way we can have a sustainable business environment is if we have flourishing workers. So what I spend most of my time in is working with our workers, helping them professionally with their business, help discipleship, encouraging them.
Yeah.
It is very, very difficult to do this. It's not easy, and so they need a lot of encouragement, a lot of help along the way. So that's kind of it
That's
in a
amazing.
nutshell.
JP, I have a million questions.
Go ahead.
As I'm hearing this is great. So yeah, just start with one. What is it? What does it look like? And I'm sure it depends on the business and the business model. But just as a general example, what does it look like for the business owner, the ones that you meet with and encourage and disciple? What does it look like for them to represent Christ and to share the gospel? Do you find that it's mostly with their employees? Is it with the customers? Like, what does it seem to be the focus, and how do they have the greatest impact? Like, if I'm owning a coffee shop or something, but I know that my ultimate goal is to represent Christ there and be a missionary, I'm getting up every day going to work. What does it look like for me to be doing that?
And before you do that, just very briefly, can you tell us the current progress, because I know you have certain numbers. How many different countries are you in, and how many
that's
workers
good.
are you currently doing this with? And then I want to hear that.
Okay.
answer
That's
that
good
question.
context. Yeah.
Yeah, we're in our organization right now. We have 30 businesses.
Okay.
We have about a dozen professionals, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, that are working in local companies, and we're in about 23 countries
That's cool.
doing that, primarily in the Middle East, North Africa, and Asia.
Okay.
Great question. Actually, the quick answer to that is yes, yes, and
Yes,
yes.
it's all of it. Yeah.
And so,
Can you come to the States and teach us how to do that here?
Yeah,
Because I got
we
some
should
people in my,
do that
my church
Yeah.
could use that.
Because one of the things we tell our people is that, and really it's the way we should live here in America, is that your business, you don't do your business during the day and then go do ministry at night.
Right.
Your
Yeah, it's
business
good.
is your ministry.
Yeah.
Your professional job is your ministry. Because in reality, for them to do that and then to go do ministry at night, they would burn out. They would
Yeah,
burn out because it's so
sure.
hard.
Yeah.
So that ministry is that as I'm trying, that missional piece is as I'm getting my licensing from the government, how am I behaving with the government?
Sure, that's great.
How am I paying my taxes, which doesn't happen everywhere?
Yeah.
How am I getting the things done without paying bribes? And having that ethical business practices that are very foreign to those cultures. That's
and
one.
And I'm sure, like, how are you being a good boss to your employees
Yeah.
and how you're representing Christ?
Your
that way.
vendors. How do you treat your
Yeah,
vendors? Do you
good.
pay them on time?
Yeah,
Do you
good.
bless them? Your employees. One of the things that we're developing is a professional development for our employees, but we can't share scripture, but we can share biblical principles. And so the professional development's about their character and business ethics from a biblical standpoint. And so all these things, so it's basically life on life in business, which I would hope we're doing. For those who are listening, this is how we should behave. When I started in the corporate world, I didn't understand that. I went to church, took off my church hat, Monday morning put my business hat on, went to work, separated the two. And just because Christ is in me, some things happened in my business, in my corporate life, where I saw people impacted. And one day, driving my car, it struck me, my work is my ministry. And it's all through the Bible. You know, in Genesis, it speaks about work in the very beginning, in Genesis 2, that he had to work the area.
Yeah.
And that work is a Hebrew word called avudah. And that same avudah is also in other scriptures, and it also denotes service. It's work, hard work like we do every day, but avudah also means service. Avudah also in other scriptures in the Old Testament means worship. So our work is service and worship. It's all integrated. And so our faith and our work are one. They're not two separate things. And when we as Christian people in the marketplace begin to realize that, we live differently, we work differently, because then we're focused on being an excellent employee or an excellent employer, and we integrate the two. It changes the society.
Yeah. Amazing. No.
Go ahead.
Can I ask one of my
Yeah,
other
do it.
questions?
Do it. Sorry. And I'm not going to interrupt
Appreciate
this time, I
it.
promise.
Very well said. I think that's helpful. Talk for just a minute about what it would look like for somebody who's already a business owner, whether an entrepreneur or in business, and is perhaps sensing that God is moving them in this direction. I can imagine one of the things that they'd be fearful the most of having to raise support, going from being your own boss, making money, you know, and talk from your experience. Now all of a sudden you're relying on other people when, like, you were used to making the money. Now you have to raise support. How do you help people in that position, and what does that transition look like?
Man, that was a hard one on
I'm
me.
sure.
I mean, you know,
Especially if you're business minded to now
for
have
sure.
to
Got it.
ask people for money.
Yeah, our organization gave us our budget, and it was like, oh dear Jesus. And one of my mentors during that time really helped us, and they said, you know what? Don't focus on raising your budget.
Okay.
Tell people the vision and the
great.
calling that you have.
Yeah.
And that you want them to buy in with their heart, not with their wallet.
Yeah,
and when we started doing that,
That's really good.
it built our faith, and people came in, and it was amazing to happen. But what happens with someone who wants to do this right now? I have a couple of young people who are very seriously considering going over as marketplace professionals. So they're going to go work for a company, but they want to just feel it out. And so I'm having them do some things from their current working context to help some of our missional businesses that are going on. One's an accountant, one's an extremely amazing young lady who's got, I mean, some of the people I get to work with, it's like I'm not even fit to tie their shoes. They're so talented. But they're going to help some things to kind of get their feet wet. But once they make that decision to go, our organization goes through a vetting process, makes sure they're qualified and things like that. And then it's really important whether you start a business or whether you're going to go work as a professional, we require our people to go to that country and spend a year to 2 years, depending on the country, doing a few things, learning language, which is extremely critical, learning the culture. And you can't do that by a book. You have to live in it. And then while they're there, also understanding if they're going to start a business, what I do tell them is during that time, you're a consumer. So you begin to look at the marketplace with a marketing mind. Where do you see a gap in the market? One of the things we do if we're going to start a business, we don't want to start a business that's going to take a local out of business. We're not trying to compete with the locals because how is that missional? That's not missional at all. So where is there a gap? Where is there a product or services that's not being provided or is not being fully provided? So while they're doing that, they're thinking of ideas. If it's a professional who's going to go to work, they're beginning to understand what's in the marketplace, what's available. And when they're living there, they have a much better opportunity to find employment. So there is a fundraising portion for those couple of years. And there might be even ongoing fundraising needed because maybe the income that they're going to receive initially isn't enough.
Thank you. I was going to ask about that.
Yeah,
if they transition, if they're making money, do they stop raising support or?
Yeah, some they do, some they do, and some they don't. So it's always very variable. And a big challenge we have, to be honest with you, is the church, because we as an organization, SIM, we're the mission agency, but we don't send the missionary. The church sends the missionary. Okay. We come alongside and help the church. And so if the church, we call it the sacred secular divide, whereas we separate ministry from work. If the church has that in their mind, then they're not going to view that person as a missionary and not going to properly send them and support them. So it's really important that the church begins to understand that faith and work are integrated. And so that's a big education that we're dealing with, not just in America, but we have that everywhere I go in the world. The church has not integrated faith and work. So we have to make that connection so that they can send them effectively and be truly a sending church like Dave's church is to us.
Great. That's so good.
Isn't it such a not that it even should be a unique concept. But I'm always convicted by what is necessary, right? Why do we love missions trips? I always say if we were to take a missions trip for our churches, right? Really, a lot of times it's more of a burden on the missionary, and the trip ends up being more beneficial for those that go on the missions trip, right? Because it gets us out of our context. We're in a foreign land, a foreign place with people that we haven't met before, and it forces us to see life differently. And man, like this is, if I could get some people, I'm sure you feel the same way, right? If there's some people in our heads and our hearts that if we could get them to more utilize the gifts and talents and the success that the Lord has allowed them to have for the sake of the kingdom, man, how quickly like stuff would change again. And I don't know, I just see us in this season where we are going to be more and more needful of this, even in our own country here in America, because of this sacred secular divide, you know? And because they're visiting, and I'll do a little bit more of the talking here because I know you've been doing nothing but talking since you guys have been back. So they JP mentioned how difficult it is to be in a foreign land.
Yeah.
And what does Scripture tell us? That we're all supposed to be foreigners.
We're exiles.
You know?
Sojourners.
Yeah.
That's right.
And we talk about that all the time, right? 'Cause
Yes.
actually, we started this podcast and called it Sojourners.
Sojourners, that's right.
So, yeah, I just absolutely love that. And so recently, Cheryl, who is here in studio with us, but not actually on camera, they have sort of had this transition. So they did this. They were in Turkey, right?
Right. Our last place was
Yeah,
Turkey.
so they were
right.
living in Turkey. How long were you living there?
Just about 2 years.
So for 2 years, they were living in Turkey, acclimating to the culture. It was kind of a center point for a lot of the travel. So a lot of
Right.
his budget was
Oh,
raising
sure.
money for
Yep.
plane
Makes sense.
tickets and all of this, so he could be helping to meet with these places. But even you can imagine the limitations to that with one person being where he is. And then his wife Cheryl's mother got sick, and they were forced to kind of come off the missions field and come back here to the States again. And it was this hard process because you can imagine what they mentioned. People see missionaries. Oh, well, why are JP and Cheryl not, overseas anymore? What are they doing? I don't know if we should support them any longer.
Yeah, that's right.
And
That's what happens.
and so we just got done doing a little bit of an update for any of those that know JP and Cheryl.
Yeah.
You'll get that soon.
Good.
And it's so funny how the Lord works, because isn't it always through the question of like, God, what are you doing? Why are you doing this again? Where they're headed now, the next steps for the two of you. So they're back here in the States right now. Cheryl lost her mother in January, so condolences there.
Yes.
Who was also a mom to you?
Yeah,
you
big
were
time.
very close to
Big
her as
time,
well,
very
right?
much so.
And then it was this: do we go back again?
Yeah.
And how many grandkids do you have? You mentioned it on Sunday.
11 by birth
So you've
and
got
13
13
altogether.
total you would consider grandchildren. How many kids?
5.
5 children, all here in the States.
Absolutely.
And so where your heart is pulled to, hey, this great mission that we
Yeah.
have, the Lord's prepared us for this. At the same time, there's that really at this point in time, you can imagine the kids with the grandkids saying, there's no way you're going back overseas again, right?
Yeah.
And okay, Lord, what does this look like? All the while, God's got these amazing plans where He opens this door with a missions,
It's a mission organization with a Bible school.
It's a missions organization with a Bible school. Where's the location in Texas?
Dallas.
In Dallas, Texas. They're going to be moving on campus,
Yep.
and
Wow.
I'm going to let you do a little bit more of the stats here.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to save your voice a little bit,
That's
JP.
okay. I'm good.
So home base is going to be Dallas, Texas for the foreseeable future within this.
Right.
But specifically in this school, who has realized over the past year or so, maybe longer than that they were sending, what's the percentage of their students that were going into the workplace?
70% of their alumni.
70% of their alumni were going into the workplace, but they were not adequately preparing them to be able to do ministry while in the workplace.
Yeah, it's a unique ministry, and that's wow. You don't even think about
So
it.
how do you
And they separated
expand?
because they've been studying for the ministry.
Yeah, sure.
And now they're not in the ministry.
Right.
Oh, I got to work. Oh, I'm not in
Yeah.
the ministry.
And then the mindset is,
Yeah.
I'm not in ministry.
ministry, yeah.
But absolutely, we
Yeah.
are.
And I got to
Wow.
tell you, for Laura and I being at the phase of life that we were, it was so amazing to almost have, parent/grandparent figures in JP and Cheryl, because it also was one of their giftings, right? So all along, it's this question of, how are you going to work this in, God? How are you going to work business into missions, and how are you going to put that together? And also
Right.
this desire to work with young people, but they have to be overseas and then not. And so it's this amazing picture that I'm watching over this next season of their ministry that I'm so looking forward to. So we fill in the gaps there of what I'm missing, of what the next season looks like. And then if you have any more questions, we'll do one or two. And then I wanted to close out with an opportunity. If any of this is poking at your heart,
Yeah.
and you're
It has
kind of
to be,
intrigued by it, even if you have questions or want to speak to JP or Cheryl and hear a little bit more about their ministry, I'm going to provide a link in the description for us below, a way for you to contact me, and then I'll make sure that I'll get you connected. Just for the sake of what we're
Right,
doing here.
right.
So fill in some of the details of what I missed with the next journey
Right.
here, what you foresee in the next couple of years, and more of the details of how expansive this actually coming home
Yeah.
is allowing you to be than previously being in Turkey.
Yeah, I think what's been great is the few years we were out in Turkey, we were gone just about every month, And so the Lord gave us an opportunity. I've been in nearly 40 countries over the last 5 to 6 years and know what's going on in the field, understand what's going on. And the biggest need from everybody is we need workers. We need more people. We need this skill set. We need an accountant. We need a HR person. We need a cosmetologist, a welder, whatever it might be. And so the Lord, in His infinite wisdom, He's so smart,
That he is.
brought us back because we know the need, but now we have to connect that need out there to the West, where there is tremendous skill sets, there is resources, and bring the need to the people there so that we can begin to mobilize. And so God, in His infinite wisdom, places us into a Bible school where 40% of the students are from outside of the U.S. So it's a very international climate, and where many of them are going into the marketplace to equip them so that when they go back to their country or maybe to another country, they can be effective in the marketplace as a person of faith who understands that faith and work are the same thing and they're not separate. So to me, it's like it allows us to expand what we're doing and move that, because I will still continue to travel. And the nice thing is Dallas is a great place to travel from.
Yeah,
a lot of the international airlines are in there, and they're very supportive of what I do. So it's just such a God thing that God did. And I'll throw this into it. It isn't a bad little perk that it happens where we're going to be living is 8 minutes from our daughter and 3 grandsons. So that keeps Grandma and Grandpa pretty happy.
That's the heart of
Everyone
God,
else
too,
is
right
going to be a
there.
little jealous,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, they understand,
The
but they're
youngest is,
well,
you know how
Yeah,
that goes
they're
get
to
over
be.
it, though.
So,
Very generous,
yeah.
Yes, he
He's
is very generous, over and above whatever
Yeah,
we think or
of course.
ask.
You know, JP
While still
is-
answering the call.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as we close, one of the things that I did want to just ask you to just share briefly on is how all of these transitions, and Dave, we mentioned season, and we talk about God working and moving us through seasons of life. And you talked about how you were in your early 60s, 61 or something, and then God really changed things and moved you on.
Right.
That can be obviously very scary too when you're thinking, like a lot of us, towards retirement. How did you? Were there certain ways that you began to then pray or hear from the Lord differently in that time? And then overall, JP, how did God's moving you and calling you into this type of ministry out of just corporate, right? How did that change you as a follower of Jesus? How did it grow you spiritually and draw you closer to the Lord?
That's a great question, Keith. And one of the things that we've recognized as we've looked back in our lives, and we've had you've said a lot of transitions. Just to give you a context to that, when we moved to our new address in Dallas, we've been married 46 years. That'll be our 25th mailing address.
Wow.
So we understand transition.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is we look back, a lot of people would say, how in the world did you move to Africa at age 61? And I would have to tell you that we've always been active in ministry in the church and all. And it started by saying yes to the small things that I can't say that God asked us to do, but that were asked of us to do. The very smallest yeses.
Okay.
And then God asked us to do other things that we said yes to. And it wasn't always this really hyper spiritual thing where I got to go pray about it. No, yes, I'll do it. And the yes and yes. And so when he asked us to go to Africa, I'll be honest with you, it wasn't a big deal. It was another yes.
Yeah, thank you for
It was, and that's our story. I can't say that for
Yeah. No, no,
everybody,
yeah, but that's good.
it was it. We prayed about it, and when God called us into full-time ministry, it wasn't a hard move because it was just another yes. And I think, and this is not us because we are just very simple people, but I think as you say yeses to God in the small things, I believe what he said to us is he says, I can trust them. They're hearing me, and I can give them a bigger task. And because I'm telling you, when I took this role for this global mission, it was, you talk about being ill-equipped. I felt so ill-equipped for this because I had never been out of the U.S. and now is responsible for businesses all around the world.
Yeah.
I've never been an entrepreneur, and now I'm for starting. But I was like, I can't do this. And then Jesus said, yes. That's why I want you to do it. And so sometimes we try to qualify ourselves for what he wants us to do.
Yeah.
And he's not looking for qualified people. He's looking for available
Yeah,
people.
it's the other way around.
Amen.
And yeah,
Just be
and just say yes. So wherever you're at, just say yes to the small things.
Yeah.
And this is what I tell people. And then, it might not happen today.
Or if you don't want to move to Nairobi, you should say no to the small thing. Because then you start answering the Lord, but you'll be missing out.
Yeah.
But I think what you talk about the
So-
change that's done in our life,
Yeah.
we've used the term trust in the Lord, and we use that but we have literally really learned how to just cast everything off to him and say, I don't know what the future is. People think, I'm sure there's people, our friends, we have some friends probably think we're crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure we have some family that thinks we're
course.
crazy because we've lived a different life.
Yeah.
But I think a part of it that we've learned, that I've learned, and I think Gerald would say the same, is really how to truly trust the Lord for what he has for us, because we've never known. We're going to Dallas. We think it's going to look like this, but we've learned to kind of leave that kind of loose in our hands because it could change. Matter of fact, it probably will change. That's been our history.
Yeah.
And we got to be okay with that because it's not our agenda anymore. It's his
We've
agenda.
talked. I appreciate that so much. We've talked on our podcast a number of times about holding ministry like that as three pastors, get together but that's a biblical principle for all of life.
Yeah,
That we
yeah.
just hold it like this because we receive more from the Lord, but we're also willing to then change. Because if we hold it too tight, right, then
Yeah.
we're taking the reins and the control.
That's right.
And so that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. It's so
Amen.
important.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to close out time because we're it's a little bit longer than what we normally do. But thank you so much for being
Yeah.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you, JP.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
saying yes to the little things. Thank you for continuing to say yes, even though those little things have become big things. And we will be praying for you and for a blessing upon your continued ministry and all of that. If you've been listening and any of this is like exciting to you, I'm going to provide you with, let's do two things. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to be able to receive JP and Cheryl's newsletter updates. So you can be able to get to that. If you would like to get in actually, can we just do that? Because they can reach you through the newsletter then, right?
Sure.
Okay, so we're going to do that. So the very first thing that you're going to find in the description of this video is going to be a link that will connect you to their newsletter list. They send it out once a month. Even if you want to start just praying for them and thinking about their ministry, if you would like to support them in their ministry, you will be able to find what you need through that as well. And then, dare I say it, maybe Jesus is calling you into business mission, even if that is here in the United States where you currently are. And that would be my prayer, is that even if you don't get sent somewhere, that you would might be convicted and realize that if you are still here, you are a son or a daughter of the Most High God by the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, your Lord and Savior, that we are all foreigners. We are all sojourning through. And while you are here, where you are is right where Jesus wants to use you to be his hands and feet. And that is worthy of surrendering yourself to. Trust me, trust JP, trust Pastor Keith. And we love you. Thank you for joining us. We're going to be another 2 weeks without another podcast. We know that it's been a while.
Yeah.
We are going to get back at it again. We're going to refresh some things, and we have a couple of months ahead that we're excited to get back to. But
This is a great way to
this
start.
should serve you
yeah.
for a couple of weeks to get you through. Make sure that you share this with someone that maybe needs to hear it. Pass it along.
Absolutely.
Not even for our sake, but for the sake of what the Lord is doing in and through really the world right now, as I'm hoping you're hearing a little bit of uniqueness. So that's all I got.
Yeah.
God bless you. Remember to answer that question, so what, every time you're in the Word.
That's right.
And it's a dangerous one, but it is an exciting one. Who knows what the Lord will do. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. God bless you. Bye.